Max Verstappen has finally broken his silence, and while his words may sound understated on the surface, they quietly mark one of the most important moments of Red Bull's entire 2026 project. For the first time, Verstappen has confirmed that he has heard the Red Bull Ford power unit running, a moment that represents far more than a simple technical milestone. This is the first tangible sign that Red Bull's bold decision to build its own engine is no longer theoretical, and for a driver whose career has been built on absolute trust in his machinery, that matters enormously. This engine is not just another evolution, it is a complete reset. Red Bull are stepping into territory they have never occupied before, transitioning from being a customer team with Honda to becoming a full power unit manufacturer through Red Bull Powertrains. Verstappen hearing that engine fire up is effectively the first time he has been face to face with the unknown future of his own career. The noise he heard was not just mechanical sound, it was the audible beginning of a new era for the team. When Verstappen described the engine as sounding crisp, that single word was loaded with meaning. Drivers are incredibly attuned to detail, especially when it comes to how an engine responds, even on a dyno. A crisp sound suggests clean combustion, sharp response, and no obvious irregularities. Verstappen was quick to clarify that sound does not equal performance, but the fact he chose to describe it positively suggests there was no immediate discomfort or concern, which in itself is significant at this early stage. What makes Verstappen's reaction particularly interesting is what he did not say. There was no excitement, no exaggeration, no attempt to hype the project. Restraint reflects a driver who understands the scale of the challenge ahead. Formula One's 2026 regulations are not about raw power anymore. They're about balance, efficiency, and energy control. Areas where small mistakes can have massive consequences over a race distance. The new power units will feature a 50-50 split between electrical energy and internal combustion, fundamentally changing how drivers extract lap time. Verstappen knows that in this new era, managing energy deployment will be just as important as outright speed. If the engine cannot deliver consistent electrical power without compromising reliability, the best drivers in the world will still be limited in what they can achieve. This is where the Red Bull-Ford partnership becomes so controversial. Red Bull are no longer protected by Honda's proven experience. They are learning in real time, competing against manufacturers like Mercedes who have decades of engine development behind them. Verstappen is fully aware that this gamble could either secure Red Bull's long-term future or expose weaknesses that even his talent cannot mask. The wider regulation changes only add to the pressure. Smaller and lighter cars, active aerodynamics on both axles, and the removal of DRS mean drivers will rely far more on natural racing dynamics. In that context, engine behavior becomes critical. Power delivery must be predictable, responsive, and perfectly integrated with energy recovery systems, especially for a driver like Verstappen, who thrives on attacking entries and aggressive throttle application. Verstappen's comments come at a fascinating time in his career. The 2025 season was one of the toughest he has faced since becoming world champion. Red Bull were no longer untouchable. McLaren's tyre management advantage exposed weaknesses, and Verstappen was forced into a defensive, reactive campaign rather than his usual dominant one. Despite that, he still nearly pulled off one of the greatest comebacks in modern F1 history. That context matters enormously because it fundamentally reshaped expectations around both Red Bull and Max Verstappen. The 2025 season proved that Verstappen could still fight at the very highest level without having the outright best car on the grid, something many critics had long questioned. However, it also exposed just how narrow the margins in modern Formula One have become. When Verstappen pinpointed Monza as the turning point of Red Bull's season, he was indirectly admitting how fragile their performance window really was. One strong weekend required countless adjustments, perfect execution, and flawless understanding of the car, while even the smallest setback could undo weeks of progress. All of this feeds directly into why the new Red Bull Ford engine matters so deeply to Verstappen on a personal level. He is not driven purely by statistics, records, or the desire to surpass legends of the past. Verstappen has repeatedly said that what truly motivates him is enjoyment, challenge, and a sense of authenticity in racing. The engine is not just a technical component, it is the foundation of the driving experience itself. If the power unit delivers confidence, responsiveness, and consistency, Formula One remains attractive to him. If it does not, the sport risks losing one of its most extraordinary talents far sooner than expected. That underlying uncertainty is exactly why speculation about Verstappen's future refuses to disappear, regardless of what his contract says on paper. Despite being tied to Red Bull until 2028, he remains the central figure in every driver market discussion. Mercedes and Aston Martin continue to loom in the background, not because Verstappen is actively planning an exit, but because his loyalty has always been conditional. He commits fully only when he believes in the project, the direction, and the people behind it. The engine program is now the ultimate test of that belief. The words of his manager, Raymond Vermeulen, reinforce that reality in a very sobering way. By openly admitting that nobody truly knows what good looks like heading into 2026, Vermeulen exposed just how vulnerable every team really is. Without a clear reference point, optimism is little more than hope. The first few races of the new era will be brutally revealing, instantly separating those who interpreted the regulations correctly from those who did not. For Verstappen, those early signals may shape decisions that extend far beyond a single season. This uncertainty naturally fuels division among fans as well. Polls show opinions almost evenly split between Verstappen staying with Red Bull, moving to another team, or eventually leaving Formula One altogether. The fact that retirement is even part of the conversation says a great deal about how differently Verstappen views his career compared to many of his predecessors. He is not clinging to the sport out of habit or fear of what comes next. He sees Formula One as one chapter in a much broader motorsport journey. Unlike drivers who become consumed by legacy and numbers, Verstappen has been remarkably open about having ambitions beyond Formula One. His involvement in GT racing, endurance projects, and sim racing reflects a driver motivated by pure competition rather than prestige. He wants to race because he loves racing, not because it adds another line to his resume. If the 2026 cars and engines fail to deliver a driving experience that excites him, walking away would not be a dramatic act, but a logical one. It's precisely why his reaction to the Red Bull Ford engine, however subtle it may have seemed, carries so much weight. It was not a carefully scripted PR statement designed to reassure sponsors or fans. It was a genuine, unfiltered response to a project that could shape the next phase of his life. His joking comment about it making a noise masks a deeper evaluation process that only elite drivers truly understand, where instinct, feel, and trust matter just as much as numbers on a screen. The reference to old V10 engines is revealing in that context. Verstappen clearly understands the emotional pull of the past, both for fans and drivers alike. However, he also accepts that Formula One has moved on and cannot simply rely on nostalgia. Sustainability, efficiency, and innovation are now non-negotiable pillars of the sport. The real challenge lies in making those elements compelling enough to maintain emotional investment, something that the new engine formula must achieve if it wants to keep drivers like Verstappen fully engaged. Meanwhile, Red Bull's rivals are already applying subtle psychological pressure. Mercedes and Honda have released soundtracks of their new engines, offering a form of reassurance about their progress and confidence in their concepts. Red Bull, by contrast, have remained largely silent, with Verstappen's comments serving as the only real insight into where they stand. That silence creates intrigue, but it also invites scrutiny, and every word spoken by Verstappen is now magnified far beyond its literal meaning. What stands out most in all of this is Verstappen's composure. There is no sign of panic, frustration, or anxiety, but there is also no blind optimism. That balance suggests a driver who is mentally prepared for any outcome. Whether the engine succeeds spectacularly or struggles early on, Verstappen appears ready to assess the situation with cold clarity, making decisions based on reality rather than sentiment or loyalty alone. As 2026 approaches, the Red Bull Ford engine will inevitably become the focal point of the entire paddock. It will define Red Bull's credibility as a manufacturer, validate or undermine their bold strategic choices, and ultimately determine whether Verstappen can realistically fight for another world championship under the new rules. Early failures would not simply cost points, they could trigger long-term consequences that reshape team structures, driver markets, and competitive hierarchies. For now, Verstappen has done exactly what was required of him. He acknowledged progress without exaggeration, offered insight without revealing too much, and deliberately left the biggest questions unanswered. That restraint keeps the narrative alive while placing maximum pressure on Red Bull Powertrains to deliver results rather than promises. Because in the end, this story is not about how the engine sounds on a dyno or how promising it looks in isolation. It is about whether it can perform under relentless pressure, lap after lap, weekend after weekend, across multiple seasons. And if it cannot, Formula One may be standing on the edge of its next great upheaval, with Max Verstappen once again positioned at the very center of the storm,